When you go and look at the whole Final Fantasy series, they have tried almost everything with it. If you include the games that are based around side characters from the series, Square-Enix has tried making fighting games, roguelikes, real-time strategy-style role-playing games, hack-and-slash games, grid-based RPGs, massively multiplayer online role-playing games, racing games, card battle, tower defense, mobile, or as I like to call games, for instance, like Final Fantasy All the Bravest, paid-win style games, action platform games, there's a snowboarding game for cell phones, a third-person shooter, rhythm games, and there was even a Japan-only trading card game. Beavis Christ, talk about experimentation. Sometimes this works in the case of Revenant Wing's Final Fantasy XII. A lot of the time, it's a big-time flop. Good examples are Chocobo Racing and the games around Final Fantasy VII. Final Fantasy Tactics, on the other hand, is an example of how to create a side series and yet help develop a team in the form, for instance, the one that came from Final Fantasy Tactics, known as the Ivalice Alliance. Final Fantasy Tactics was released in Japan on June 20th, 1997, in North America on January 28th, 1998, and a re-release to PlayStation Network was released in 2009. The game had completely new teamwork on the game, but Hironobu Sakaguchi, knowing how great this game could be, was the producer again. According to Wikipedia, it was directed and written by Yasumi Matsuno, who had previously worked on the Japan-only Ogre Battle games for the SNES. Other newcomers include Hitoshi Sakamoto and Matsuhiro Iwata to work as composers in place of Nobuo Uematsu. Akichiko Yoshida and Hiroshi Mingawato worked on the art. All of these people came from the same team as Matsuno, so Squaresoft knew what they were doing by pretty much hiring a team that knows how to make quality and unique grid-based RPGs. All they needed to do was give them some experience in marketing, and we have a classic. Graphics are very similar to a lot of other grid-based RPGs. It uses a very similar graphic style to Tactics Ogre Let Us Cling Together, but it has quite a few upgrades. Entire levels use more elements of 3D, more detail has been added to monsters, and overall, at the time, it looked fairly well done in comparison. It's not going to set the world on fire, but still a solid looking game. My only real problem is the frame rate can get somewhat choppy. During summons or powerful magic spells, the game has a tendency to slow down. It's not constant, but it's somewhat of an annoyance. Now, as for some of the plots of the main series, I think that they've been played either by enough people, the game's story is good enough, or the plot's been explained enough times for me not to spoil it for you. This one, I think, can be easily skipped through, and that some may have done so because it's not exactly needed to finish the game in my opinion. Since I can't remember the story with the damn, I'll go with somebody else's story. According to Wikipedia, the story takes place after Ivalice ended its war with the two nations in what is known as the 50 Years' War, and is facing economic problems and political strife. Adding to its problems is the recent death of the king, whose heir is only an infant. A regent is needed to rule in place of the prince, and the kingdom is split between Prince Gotana, represented by the Black Lion, and Prince Larg, symbolized by the White Lion. Conflict leads to what is known in the game as the Lion. Behind this backdrop is a revelation by game's historian Alzalam J. Daraj, who seeks to reveal the story of an unknown character whose role in the Lion War was major but was covered up by the kingdom's church. The setting is based around this character, named by default as Ramza, and revolves around his early life and the future conflicts he faced while the events that changed the kingdom unfold. Trust me, this is definitely a story worth going through and experiencing every detail. The audio yet again is great. The game has one of my most favorite tracks of all time in the series, the track that leads to the title screen. When I was a kid, I listened to this track all the way through every time I booted it up. Not to say that the rest of the soundtrack is bad. The soundtrack has a lot of good music, and at this point it almost seems too easy for Squaresoft in general to make great music. From the battle theme, overworld theme, there's just track after track, great music. It's not my most favorite soundtrack, but it stands out on its own. the gameplay is love or hate it. I will warn you, I haven't played this game in a long time because how big of a time commitment it can be. This game can be absolutely brutal if you don't have prior knowledge of this genre or this game. Before we get into difficulty, let's get into the game that it is. The game plays a lot like chess, but if a Dungeons and Dragons fan went, let's have some fun and add pre-made characters to it. The game has a class system much like Final Fantasy 3 or 5. Each character has certain classes available at that time. You can unlock more through leveling up classes, and each class has its own abilities you can unlock through using points earned by doing battles, completing missions, and so forth. As for the fights, it's a tile-based system. The turn order goes by character speed, and faster characters will get turns quicker. On average, each character gets one move and one action. Depending on the circumstance, that character may get multiple attacks or have to wait a few turns to get the attack off. Just be conscious of where you target. There's no friendly fire, and you still have to pay the resource cost even if it doesn't hit anything. You can also go to higher ground to avoid certain attacks. These elements add depth to a standard grid-based game. The problem I have with the game is that the learning curve can be deceptively brutal. Early on you may not notice it, but if you don't level the way the game wants you to, it will corner and destroy you with one of those can't go back fights. Save early and often, my friends. Another problem is that the game's grinding is also brutal. It tries to loosen how much you do, but again, if you don't know how to get certain classes, it will cut your balls off without a second thought. If you're a first-time player, I'd suggest you either going to find a walkthrough or strategy guide, otherwise, better like learning the hard way. The thing is, not everything in this game is bad. There's a lot of fun to be had with the gameplay. It's challenging, it has a lot of depth with its class system, it has a really interesting plot, and it's a game where you can sit in tons and tons of hours before finishing it. I just think that first-time players looking for a good game to start off with in the grid-based RPG genre may find it brutally difficult and may kind of steer them away from it. Overall, Final Fantasy Tactics is an extremely good game for fans of the genre. If you can get past its brutal learning curve at times, you will find a great game that doesn't treat you like an idiot and expects you to adapt or die. It's not so hard that it's impossible, but I think casual fans should go play the sequel, Final Fantasy Tactics Advance. Overall, I would give it an 8.5 out of 10.